The words hung in the air like smoke that refused to clear. I want a baby. Can you help me? I stood in my doorway, my hands still gripping the handle, my brain trying to process what my neighbor, the man who lived in the penthouse suite of our building, had just asked me. Ethan Calloway, the billionaire whose face appeared in magazines and whose name was whispered in financial circles, was standing in front of my modest apartment door in a navy blue sweater, looking at me with eyes that held more pain than I had ever seen in any human being. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. This was not how I expected my Tuesday evening to go. I had just come home from the library where I worked, kicked off my shoes and poured myself a glass of water. I was planning to heat up leftover pasta and read a few chapters of the novel I had been working through all week. Simple, quiet, predictable. That was my life. Simple, quiet, and predictable. I am Brianna Foster. 32 years old. Single. A librarian who loves the smell of old books and the sound of rain against windows. I live alone in apartment 4B, and I have lived alone for the past 6 years since my last relationship ended quietly, like most things in my life. I'm not the kind of woman who attracts attention. I'm not the kind of woman that billionaires notice. Yet here he was. Ethan Calloway had moved into the penthouse 3 years ago, and in all that time, we had exchanged perhaps a dozen words. Good morning in the elevator. Excuse me in the lobby. A polite nod when we passed each other in the hallway. I knew who he was because everyone knew who he was. His technology company had changed the way people communicated across the globe. His wealth was legendary. His privacy was fierce. And now he was asking me for a baby. I know this is strange, he said, his voice low and careful. I know you probably think I have lost my mind. Maybe I have. But I have thought about this for a long time, and I believe you are the right person to ask. Me? I finally managed to speak. The word came out as a whisper. Why me? He looked down at his hands for a moment. They were strong hands, but they trembled slightly. Because I have watched you for 3 years. Not in a strange way, I promise. But I have seen who you are. I have seen how you treat people, how you carry yourself, how you live your life with kindness and grace. I have seen you help Mrs. Patterson carry her groceries. I have seen you stop to talk to the children in the lobby. I have seen you donate books to the shelter down the street. I swallowed hard. I did not know anyone had noticed those things. I need someone good, he continued. Someone kind. Someone who would love a child the way a child deserves to be loved. And I believe that person is you. My heart was beating so fast I could hear it in my ears. This could not be real. This had to be some kind of dream or joke or mistake. Billionaires did not knock on the doors of ordinary librarians and ask them to help bring a child into the world. I do not understand, I said honestly. You are wealthy. You are successful. You could have anyone. Why would you need my help? Pain crossed his face like a shadow. May I come in? I promise I will explain everything. And if you say no, I will never bother you again. I will move out of the building if it makes you uncomfortable. But please, just give me a chance to explain. I should have said no. Any reasonable person would have said no. But there was something in his eyes, something broken and desperate and achingly human, that made me step aside and let him in. He walked into my small apartment and looked around. I suddenly felt self-conscious about my second-hand furniture and my overflowing bookshelves. But he did not seem to judge. He simply sat down on the edge of my worn blue couch and clasped his hands together. 5 years ago I was married, he began. Her name was Caroline. She was the love of my life. We met in college before I had any money, before any of this happened. She loved me when I was nobody. And I loved her more than I knew it was possible to love another person. His voice cracked slightly, and I found myself sitting down across from him, my own concerns fading as I listened. We tried for years to have children. It was all she wanted. All we wanted. But it never happened. We went through treatments, procedures, everything. Nothing worked. And then 3 years ago she got sick. He paused, his jaw tightening. Cancer. It took her in 8 months. I am so sorry, I said softly, and I meant it. After she died, I threw myself into work. I thought if I could just stay busy enough, I would not have to feel anything. But the emptiness never went away. And then I realized what was missing. It was not just Caroline. It was the family we never got to have. The child we never got to raise together. He looked up at me and there were tears in his eyes. I have tried adoption agencies. I have spoken to surrogacy companies. But every time something goes wrong. They see my money and they want to take advantage. They see my name and they want publicity. I do not want any of that. I just want a child. I just want to be a father. And I want to do it with someone who is genuine. Someone who is real. I sat in silence, my mind racing. This was too much to process. Too much to understand in a single evening. I am not asking you to marry me, he clarified quickly. I am not asking for anything inappropriate. I am simply asking if you would consider being the mother of my child. You would never have to worry about anything again. I would take care of everything, provide everything. And you would have a say in every decision. We would be partners in this. Partners. The word echoed in my head. I need time, I heard myself say. I need to think about this. Of course. He stood up immediately. Take all the time you need. I will not pressure you. I will not even mention it again unless you bring it up first. He walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. Miss Foster, I know this is a lot. But I want you to know that I am sincere. This is not a game to me. This is not about my money or my reputation. This is about wanting something real in a life that has felt empty for too long. And then he was gone, leaving me alone with a question that would change my life forever. Before I continue this story, I want to ask you something. If someone you barely knew came to you with a request this big, this life-changing, would you walk away? Or would you at least hear them out? Let me know in the comments what you would do. And if you want to see how Brianna's decision unfolds, make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss what happens next. The story is just getting started. That night I could not sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every word Ethan had said. His request was outrageous. It was impractical. It was the kind of thing that only happened in movies, not in real life. But his pain was real. That much I knew. I thought about my own life. My quiet routines. My empty apartment. My days that all looked the same. I had been comfortable in my solitude, but somewhere along the way I had stopped dreaming. I had stopped hoping for more. Maybe that was why his words had affected me so deeply. Because a part of me, a small and buried part, had always wanted to be a mother. I had just never found the right person. I had just never had the opportunity. And now, in the strangest possible way, the opportunity had knocked on my door. I picked up my phone and called my mother. Baby, it is nearly midnight, she answered groggily. What is wrong? Mama, I need to tell you something. And I need you to not think I am crazy. I told her everything. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end. This man, she finally said. Is he a good man? I think so. I do not know him well, but I have watched him too over the years. He is always polite. Always kind. He never acts like he is better than anyone else. And you believe what he said about his wife? About wanting a family? Yes, I admitted. I do. My mother took a deep breath. Then I think you should at least talk to him more. Get to know him. You do not have to decide anything right now. But do not dismiss this just because it seems impossible. Sometimes the impossible things are the ones worth considering. I hung up the phone feeling slightly lighter. My mother was right. I did not have to decide tonight. I just had to be open to the possibility. The next morning I found a note slipped under my door. Miss Foster, if you are willing, I would like to take you to coffee. No pressure, no expectations. Just a chance to talk. Meet me in the lobby at 10 if you are interested. If not, I understand completely. I looked at the clock. It was 9:30. I had 30 minutes to decide if I was going to change my life. I put on my favorite red blouse, the one that made me feel confident. I looked at myself in the mirror. The same brown eyes. The same curly hair. The same ordinary face that I had seen every day for 32 years. But maybe ordinary was exactly what Ethan needed. At 10 o'clock I walked into the lobby. He was there, waiting, hope flickering in his eyes. Then I guess I am becoming a mother, I said quietly. And just like that, everything changed. We walked to a small coffee shop 2 blocks from our building. It was the kind of place I passed every day but had never entered, with large windows that let in streams of morning light and simple wooden tables that smelled of fresh pastries and ground beans. Ethan held the door open for me, and I walked in feeling like I was entering a different world. Not because of the coffee shop itself, but because of what this conversation represented. A new beginning. A terrifying possibility. We found a quiet table in the corner, away from the other customers. A young woman with bright pink hair took our orders, and then we were alone, facing each other with nothing but a small wooden table between us. Thank you for coming, Ethan said. His voice was softer than it had been the night before, as if he had spent the whole night worrying I would not show up. Thank you for the invitation, I replied. I have a lot of questions. I expected that. Ask me anything. I will answer honestly. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug that had been placed in front of me. The coffee smelled rich and dark. Tell me more about Caroline. Tell me about your life before. He smiled slightly, but it was a sad smile. Caroline was my best friend before she was anything else. We met in a computer science class our sophomore year of college. She was the only person who could beat me at coding challenges. I was immediately interested. I found myself smiling despite the heaviness of the topic. She sounds impressive. She was brilliant, funny, stubborn. She never let me get away with anything. He paused, his eyes distant. When I started my company, she was right there beside me. She believed in me when no one else did. She worked alongside me in a tiny apartment, eating ramen noodles and dreaming about the future. And when the success came, she never changed. The money meant nothing to her. She still wore the same clothes, still drove the same old car, still insisted on cooking dinner every Sunday even when we could afford a private chef. He shook his head slowly. She wanted a simple life. A family. Children playing in the backyard. That was her dream. But it did not happen. No. We tried everything. Doctors, specialists, treatments that cost more than most people earn in a year. Nothing worked. And I watched her heart break a little more each time. His voice grew thick. When she got sick, I think she had already given up. Not on life, but on that particular dream. She told me once that her biggest regret was not giving me a child. I felt tears prick at my eyes. That must have been so hard to hear. It was. Because I never cared about having children for myself. I wanted them for her. I wanted to see her hold a baby. I wanted to watch her become the mother I knew she would be. He looked down at his coffee, untouched. After she died, I thought that dream died with her. But then I realized it did not have to. And that is when you started looking for other options? He nodded. I tried adoption first. But the process was complicated by my profile. Agencies were concerned about media attention. Birth mothers were hesitant. And some honestly saw dollar signs instead of a child who needed a home. His jaw tightened. I encountered people who wanted to sell me a baby like a business transaction. It made me sick. And surrogacy? Similar problems. Companies that promised discretion but leaked information to the press. Women who saw an opportunity for financial gain rather than a genuine partnership. He finally looked up at me. I do not judge anyone for wanting financial security, but I need this to be about more than money. I need this to be about creating a real family. I considered his words carefully. And you think I can give you that? I know you can. I have seen it in the way you live your life. You do not care about status or wealth. You care about people. About kindness. About what is real. The young waitress returned to check on us, and we both fell silent until she left. When we were alone again, I asked the question that had been burning in my mind all night. If I agree to this, what exactly would it look like? Practically speaking? Ethan leaned forward slightly. I have thought about this extensively. First, we would need medical consultation. I have already identified a specialist, Dr. Angela Morrison, who comes highly recommended and is known for her discretion. She would guide us through the process. And the process would be? In vitro fertilization. The baby would be biologically mine and yours. Unless you are uncomfortable with that, in which case we could explore other options. I swallowed. Hearing it stated so plainly made it feel more real than it had before. This was not abstract anymore. This was about creating a child, half me and half him. Go on, I said quietly. I would provide for everything. Medical expenses, living arrangements, anything you need during the pregnancy and beyond. You would not have to work unless you wanted to. And after the baby is born. He hesitated. I want you to be involved. Not just as a surrogate who hands over a child and walks away. I want you to be the child's mother. Truly. In every way that matters. You want me to raise the child with you? Yes. As partners. As co-parents. I'm not asking you to pretend to love me or be with me romantically. I am just asking you to help me give a child a loving home. The weight of his words settled over me. This was not a simple request. This was a commitment that would last a lifetime. What if I cannot do it? I asked honestly. What if I get pregnant and something goes wrong? What if I am not the mother you think I will be? Brianna. It was the first time he had used my first name and it felt intimate somehow. I have faith in you. More than I have faith in anyone else I have met. But if at any point you change your mind, if this becomes too much, you can walk away. I will never hold you to anything you do not want. I sat back in my chair, my mind spinning. This man was offering me everything. Financial security. Purpose. A chance at motherhood. And he was doing it with such sincerity that I could not doubt his intentions. I need to meet Dr. Morrison, I said finally. I need to understand the medical side of this before I can commit. Of course. I will arrange it. Relief flooded his face. Thank you. for even considering this. I am not promising anything yet, I reminded him. I am just agreeing to learn more. That is more than enough. We sat in that coffee shop for another hour talking about smaller things. I learned that he liked classical music and long walks in the park. He learned that I had a secret love for old movies and could name every capital city in the world. We laughed for the first time together when he admitted he could not cook anything more complicated than scrambled eggs. By the time we left, something had shifted between us. We were not strangers anymore. We were something else entirely, though I did not yet have a word for it. As we walked back to our building, he stopped suddenly and turned to me. I want you to know something, he said. Whatever you decide, I am grateful. Not just because you listened, but because you treated me like a person. Not like a billionaire. Not like a name in the headlines. Just a person. I looked into his blue eyes and saw loneliness there. Deep, aching loneliness that all his money could not touch. You are welcome, Ethan, I said softly. We all deserve to be seen for who we really are. Something flickered in his gaze. Surprise maybe. Or hope. We parted in the lobby, each returning to our separate lives. But I knew even then that those lives were beginning to merge in ways I could not yet imagine. That evening I called my best friend Renee. You need to sit down, I told her. I'm already sitting. I'm eating ice cream and watching a cooking show. What is going on? I took a deep breath and told her everything. When I finished, the line was silent for so long I thought she had hung up. Renee? Are you there? Girl? Her voice was barely above a whisper. Are you serious right now? Completely serious. Ethan Callaway. The Ethan Callaway. Asked you to have his baby. Yes. And you are actually considering it? Yes. Another long pause. Then, what does he look like up close? I burst out laughing despite the tension. Leave it to Renee to ask the most irrelevant question at the most important moment. He is handsome, I suppose. Tall. Blue eyes. But that is not the point. The point is that a billionaire wants you to be the mother of his child, and you want my opinion. I could hear her setting down her spoon. Bree, this is insane. You know that, right? I know. But also, kind of amazing? I smiled. Maybe. I am meeting the fertility doctor tomorrow. Just to get information. Okay. Well, if you decide to do this, I'm going to need regular updates. And I want to meet him. Like soon. Deal. After we hung up, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling again. But this time, instead of confusion, I felt something different. I felt possibility. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself imagine a future that looked nothing like I had planned. Dr. Angela Morrison's office was nothing like I expected. I had imagined cold sterility, white walls and harsh lighting, the kind of clinical environment that made you feel like a specimen under a microscope. Instead, I found warm cream walls decorated with tasteful art, comfortable seating areas with soft green cushions, and a receptionist who greeted us with genuine warmth. Mr. Callaway, Miss Foster, she said with a smile. Dr. Morrison is ready for you. Ethan touched my elbow gently, a small gesture of reassurance. We had met in the lobby of the medical building that morning, both nervous but trying not to show it. He wore a dark blue suit, and I had chosen my favorite maroon dress, the one that made me feel put together even when I was falling apart inside. We followed the receptionist down a hallway lined with photographs of smiling families. Babies cradled in loving arms. Toddlers taking first steps. Children blowing out birthday candles. Each image represented someone's answered prayer, someone's miracle. Could I be looking at my future? Dr. Morrison rose from behind her desk when we entered. She was a tall woman in her 50s with silver streaked through her dark hair and kind eyes behind elegant glasses. Her handshake was firm but welcoming. Please sit down, she said, gesturing to the chairs across from her. I have reviewed the information Mr. Callaway sent over, but I would like to hear from both of you directly. This is a significant decision, and I want to ensure everyone is fully informed. For the next hour, she walked us through the process in clear, simple terms. The medications I would need to take. The procedures involved in egg retrieval and fertilization. The timeline for embryo transfer and the waiting period that would follow. She answered every question I had with patience and thoroughness. And the success rates? I asked. For a woman your age and in good health, the chances are quite favorable. Of course, there are no guarantees in medicine. But I have helped many couples and individuals build families through this process, and I am confident we can give you the best possible chance. I glanced at Ethan. He was watching me with that quiet intensity one was beginning to recognize, waiting for my reaction without pushing. What about legal considerations? He asked. I want everything to be clear and fair for Miss Foster. Dr. Morrison nodded. I always recommend my patients work with a family law attorney to draft a clear agreement. Mr. Calloway has already indicated he wants Miss Foster to have full parental rights and protections. That is something I strongly support. Full parental rights. Not a surrogate who would hand over a baby and disappear. A real mother with real standing. I have already contacted a lawyer, Ethan told me. She comes highly recommended and has experience with these situations. But nothing will be signed until you are comfortable. Until you have had time to review everything with your own legal counsel if you prefer. His thoughtfulness continued to surprise me. At every turn he was making sure I felt protected, respected, considered. It was not what I had expected from someone of his wealth and position. Can I have a few days? I asked Dr. Morrison. To think about everything? Absolutely. There is no rush. This is a life-changing decision, and it should not be made lightly. She handed me a folder. Here is some reading material that might help. Information about the medical process, potential risks and side effects, and support resources for intended parents. We thanked her and left the office. Outside, the spring air was fresh and cherry blossoms were beginning to bloom along the street. The world looked soft and new, full of beginnings. Walk with me, Ethan asked. We strolled through a nearby park, neither of us speaking at first. The silence was comfortable though not awkward. Just two people processing a lot of information. You have been very quiet, he finally said. I am thinking. Good thoughts or bad thoughts? I smiled slightly. Just thoughts. This is a lot to take in. I know. And I meant what I said inside. If you need more time, take it. If you decide this is not for you, I will understand. I stopped walking and turned to face him. Can I ask you something honestly? Anything. Why are you being so kind to me? So careful with my feelings? You could have approached this like a business deal. Many people in your position would have. He considered the question seriously. Because kindness matters. Because the way we treat each other matters. My wife taught me that. His eyes grew distant for a moment. Before she died, she made me promise something. She said, do not let the world make you hard, Ethan. Stay soft. Stay human. I have tried to honor that promise every day since. My heart clenched. This man, with all his money and all his power, was trying so hard to be good. Not because anyone was watching. Not because he had something to gain. But because he had loved someone who taught him the value of gentleness. I want to do this, I said quietly. The words came out before I could second-guess them. Ethan's eyes widened. Are you sure? I'm not saying I am not scared. I am terrified actually. But I believe you are sincere. I believe you will be a good father. And I believe this child, whoever they turn out to be, will be loved beyond measure. He let out a breath I did not realize he had been holding. Brianna, I do not know how to thank you. You do not have to thank me. Just be honest with me. Always. No matter what. I promise. We stood there in the park, cherry blossoms drifting around us like pink snow, and I felt the weight of my decision settle into my bones. There was no turning back now. That weekend, I drove home to visit my mother. Patricia Foster lived in a small house in New Jersey, the same house where I had grown up. The garden was immaculate, bursting with spring flowers in every color imaginable. Mama had always said that tending her garden was like tending her soul, and looking at it now, I could see her soul was thriving. Baby girl, she said, wrapping me in a hug the moment I walked through the door. She smelled like she always did, like lavender and something baking in the oven. Hi, Mama. We sat at her kitchen table, cups of tea between us, while I told her about my meeting with Dr. Morrison, about the legal protections, about my decision. You have made up your mind, she observed when I finished. Yes. She reached across the table and took my hand. Then I support you. I will always support you, baby. You know that. I know. But I also want your honest opinion. Do you think I am being foolish? She thought about it for a long moment. I think life rarely gives us what we expect. I think the best things often come in unexpected packages. And I think you have a good heart, Brianna. That heart has been waiting for something to pour itself into. She squeezed my hand. Maybe this is it. Tears pricked at my eyes. Thank you, Mama. Now. She sat back with a knowing smile. Tell me more about this Ethan. Is he as handsome as he looks in those magazine photos? I laughed, and just like that, the tension broke. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking about lighter things, looking through old photo albums, eating the apple pie she had pulled from the oven. For a few hours, I was just Brianna Foster, a daughter visiting her mother on a spring day. But as I drove back to the city that evening, reality settled back around me. In a matter of weeks, I would begin a process that could result in new life. A child who would carry pieces of me and pieces of Ethan. A little person who would call us both parent. The thought was overwhelming and beautiful all at once. Monday morning, I met with Ethan and the attorney he had hired, a sharp woman named Catherine Powell who specialized in family law. She walked us through every clause of the agreement, explaining our rights and responsibilities in plain language. "Miss Foster, I want to be absolutely clear," she said, looking at me directly. "Under this agreement you will have full parental rights. You are not a surrogate in the traditional sense. You will be the child's legal mother with all the rights that entails." "And if something changes?" I asked. "If Mr. Calloway and I have a disagreement about something important? There are provisions for mediation and dispute resolution. But I have to say, in all my years of practice, I have never seen someone put such extensive protections in place for the other party." She glanced at Ethan. "Mr. Calloway has been very insistent that you be fully protected." I looked at him and he met my gaze steadily. "I told you. I want this to be fair. I want you to feel safe." That afternoon, after going through everything twice more, I signed the agreement. It was done. I was going to become a mother. The first few weeks after signing the agreement were a blur of appointments and preparations. Dr. Morrison started me on medications to prepare my body for the egg retrieval process. There were blood tests and ultrasounds and daily injections that made me feel like a human pincushion. But Ethan was there through all of it. He drove me to every appointment, waited in reception areas with magazines he never actually read, and always had a bottle of water and a snack ready for afterward. When the injections made me tired and irritable, he sent meals from a nearby restaurant so I would not have to cook. When I felt overwhelmed, he sat with me in comfortable silence, never asking for more than I could give. Slowly, through these small acts of care, I began to know him. "Tell me about your childhood," I asked one evening as we sat in his penthouse living room. The space was enormous compared to my apartment, but he had decorated it warmly, with soft rugs and comfortable furniture and shelves full of books. It felt more like a home than I had expected. "My childhood was complicated," he admitted, settling into the chair across from me. "My father was a businessman, successful in his own right but never satisfied. He pushed me constantly. Nothing was ever good enough." "That sounds difficult." It was. But it also drove me. For a long time I thought success would finally earn his approval. He shook his head slightly. It never did. Even when my company became worth billions, he still found things to criticize. "Do you still see him?" "Occasionally. He lives in Connecticut now, retired. Our relationship is distant." He paused. "My mother passed when I was young, so it was always just the two of us. I think he did not know how to be soft without her." I thought about my own father, who had left when I was 5 and never looked back. Different kind of absence, but absence all the same. "My father was not around either," I shared. "It was just me and my mother. She worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat, never complained, never let me see her struggle. She is the strongest person I know." "She raised an incredible daughter," Ethan said quietly. I felt warmth spread through my chest at his words. We were doing this, I realized. We were sharing pieces of ourselves, building the foundation of something that had no name yet but felt important. As the weeks passed, we developed routines. Tuesday evenings he would come to my apartment with takeout, and we would eat while watching old movies on my small television. He laughed at my obsession with black and white films and pretended to complain when I made him watch Casablanca for the 3rd time. Thursday afternoons I would visit his penthouse, and he would show me the nursery he was beginning to plan. We looked at paint samples together, debating between soft yellow and mint green. "I do not want anything too gendered," he explained. "We do not know yet if it will be a boy or a girl, and honestly, I do not think colors should be assigned anyway." "I agree completely," I said, surprised and pleased by his thoughtfulness. We chose mint green. On weekends we took walks in Central Park, watching dogs play and children run and couples hold hands on benches. Sometimes we talked about the future, about what kind of parents we wanted to be. Other times we just walked in silence, comfortable in each other's company. My friend Renee finally met him on a Saturday evening when she came over for dinner. "You must be Renee," Ethan said warmly, shaking her hand. "Brianna speaks about you constantly." "All good things, I hope," Renee replied, giving me a look that said we would be discussing this later in great detail. The dinner was surprisingly easy. Ethan had ordered food from a restaurant neither of us could normally afford, and he insisted we open a bottle of wine that probably cost more than my rent. But he never made us feel outclassed. He asked Renee about her work at the library, remembered details Brianna had mentioned, and laughed at her jokes like they were old friends. After he left, Renee turned to me with wide eyes. Okay, I get it now. Get what? Why you are doing this? That man is. She searched for the word. Good. Like actually good. Not fake good. Not rich person good. Just genuinely kind. I know, I said softly. That is why I said yes. She hugged me tight. You deserve this, Bree. Whatever this turns out to be, you deserve it. 2 days before the egg retrieval, something unexpected happened. I was at home, feeling nervous about the procedure when my phone rang. It was Ethan. Can you come up to the penthouse? He asked. His voice sounded strange. There is someone I want you to meet. 20 minutes later, I stood in his living room facing an elderly man with Ethan's blue eyes and silver hair combed back from a stern face. He wore an expensive gray suit and held himself with the rigid posture of someone who had spent a lifetime demanding respect. Brianna, this is my father, Ethan said carefully. Theodore Calloway. Dad, this is Brianna Foster. Theodore looked me up and down with the kind of assessment that made me want to shrink. But I lifted my chin and met his gaze directly. I had nothing to be ashamed of. So you are the woman, Theodore said. It was not a question. Yes, sir. I am. A long moment passed. Then something shifted in his expression. Not warmth exactly, but something like acknowledgement. My son tells me you are a librarian. I am. And you have agreed to this arrangement. I have. He was quiet for another moment, then nodded slowly. I do not understand it. But Ethan has always made his own choices, regardless of what I think. He looked at his son. If this is what you want, I will not stand in your way. It was not exactly acceptance. But it was not rejection either. And from what Ethan had told me about their relationship, this was significant. After Theodore left, Ethan let out a long breath. Well, that went better than I expected. I could not help but laugh. That was better? Much better. He did not lecture me about responsibility or question your motives or threaten to involve lawyers. He smiled slightly. For my father, that is practically an embrace. I laughed again, and this time he joined me. We stood in his living room, laughing together at the absurdity of it all, and I realized something that made me catch my breath. I cared about this man. Not just as a partner in this process. Not just as someone I was working with toward a common goal. I cared about him as a person. About his happiness. About his peace of mind. I did not know what to do with that feeling yet. But I knew I could not ignore it. The egg retrieval went smoothly. Dr. Morrison called 3 days later with news that made my heart race. We had 4 viable embryos. In 2 weeks, if everything continued on schedule, we would proceed with the transfer. For potential lives. For possible futures. The numbers felt both abstract and impossibly real. Ethan insisted I move into his penthouse during the waiting period. You should not be alone right now, he said gently. And I want to be there if you need anything. I hesitated at first. Moving in felt like crossing some invisible line, even though we were not involved romantically. But practical concerns won out. His penthouse was larger, more comfortable, closer to the medical facility. And truthfully, I did not want to be alone either. Okay, I agreed. Thank you. He set up the guest room for me with more care than I had expected. Fresh flowers on the nightstand. A stack of books he must have noticed on my shelves at home. A soft blue blanket that looked handmade. Where did this come from? I asked, touching the blanket. It was Caroline's, he said quietly. She made it when we were first trying to have a baby. I thought, maybe you would like to have something of hers nearby. My throat tightened. This man kept surprising me with his thoughtfulness, his tenderness, his willingness to share pieces of himself that must hurt to give away. It is beautiful, I said. Thank you. The days leading up to the transfer were filled with quiet anticipation. We fell into an easy rhythm. Mornings, Ethan would make breakfast, which usually consisted of burnt toast and overcooked eggs despite his best efforts. I would laugh and help him salvage what I could, teaching him basic techniques his private chefs had never bothered to share. You have to watch the pan, I explained one morning, standing beside him at the stove. See how the edges are starting to set? Now you fold gently like this. Like this? He attempted the motion and produced something that looked vaguely like an omelet. He grinned at me with such pride that I could not help but smile back. Perfect, I said. You are a natural. Afternoons we would sit in his living room and talk. He told me about his work, about the challenges of running a company that affected millions of people. I told him about my favorite books, about the children who came to the library for story time, about my dream of someday writing a children's book of my own. You should do it, he said seriously. You have a gift for storytelling. I can hear it in the way you describe things. Maybe someday. Why not now? What is stopping you? I thought about it. Fear, I suppose. Fear that it will not be good enough. Fear that I will fail. He nodded slowly. I understand that fear. But I have learned something over the years. The things we do not try become the things we regret most. Not the failures. The failures teach us. But the things we never attempt, those haunt us. His words stayed with me long after the conversation ended. The night before the transfer, neither of us could sleep. We sat on the balcony of his penthouse, wrapped in blankets against the spring chill, watching the city lights sparkle below. The sky was clear and stars were visible despite the urban glow, a rare gift in New York. Are you scared? He asked me. Yes, I admitted. Are you? Terrified. I turned to look at him. His profile was sharp against the city backdrop, but there was a softness in his expression that I had come to recognize. What scares you most? I asked. He thought about it. That it will not work. That after everything, after all of this, we will face disappointment again. He paused. And that you will regret agreeing to help me. I will not regret it, I said firmly. Whatever happens tomorrow, I will not regret this decision. How can you be so sure? Because I have already gained something valuable. I have gained a friend. I smiled at him. That is worth more than any outcome. Something shifted in his eyes. A warmth that made my breath catch. You are remarkable, he said softly. Do you know that? I did not know how to respond, so I just looked back at the stars, my heart beating faster than it should. The transfer procedure was quick and uneventful. Dr. Morrison walked us through every step, her voice calm and reassuring. I lay on the table, Ethan sitting beside me holding my hand, and watched on the monitor as a tiny cluster of cells, no bigger than a grain of sand, was placed inside me. That grain of sand could become a person. A child. Our child. Tears slipped down my cheeks and I did not try to stop them. Ethan squeezed my hand tighter and when I looked at him, his eyes were wet too. Now we wait, Dr. Morrison said gently. 2 weeks until we can confirm pregnancy. Until then, rest, stay calm and try not to worry. Easier said than done. The 2 weeks that followed were the longest of my life. I tried to stay busy. I read books. I watched movies. I attempted to help Ethan with his cooking, though his skills remained questionable. We painted the nursery together, covering ourselves in mint green splatters and laughing at the mess we made. But underneath it all, the waiting gnawed at me. Ethan was endlessly patient. When I snapped at him over something small, he did not take offense. When I cried for no reason, he brought me tea and sat with me until the tears passed. When I could not sleep, he stayed up with me playing quiet music and telling me stories about his travels around the world. Thank you, I told him one night after a particularly difficult bout of anxiety. For everything. For being so kind. You do not need to thank me, he said. This is what partners do. They support each other. Partners. The word settled into my heart and made a home there. The morning of the blood test, I woke up feeling strangely calm. Whatever the result, I had done everything I could. Whatever happened next was out of my hands. Ethan drove me to the clinic and we sat in the waiting room together, not speaking, just being present. The other patients came and went, each carrying their own hopes and fears, their own stories of longing and love. Finally, Dr. Morrison called us back. Her face gave nothing away as she sat us down. She opened a folder, looked at the results, and then raised her eyes to meet ours. Congratulations, she said, her professional demeanor cracking into a warm smile. You are pregnant. The world stopped. Then started again, brighter than before. I was going to be a mother. And as Ethan pulled me into a hug, both of us shaking with emotion, I knew that everything had changed. Forever. The first few weeks of pregnancy felt like living inside a dream. Every morning, I woke up in Ethan's guest room and spent a moment just breathing, reminding myself that this was real. A new life was growing inside me. A tiny heartbeat had joined my own. Dr. Morrison scheduled regular appointments to monitor the pregnancy. Each ultrasound brought new wonder, watching the baby grow from a small blur to something that looked more human each time. At 8 weeks, we saw the flutter of a heartbeat on the screen. Ethan gripped my hand so tightly I thought he might never let go. There, Dr. Morrison said, pointing to the pulsing spot on the monitor. Strong and steady. Everything looks perfect. I could not speak. Neither could Ethan. We just stared at that tiny miracle, our miracle, and let the tears fall freely. As the weeks passed, Ethan's devotion only deepened. He researched everything obsessively. Pregnancy nutrition, safe exercises, developmental milestones. He bought books about parenting and left them scattered around the penthouse, pages marked with yellow sticky notes. Did you know the baby can hear sounds starting around 18 weeks? He asked me one evening, his face alight with excitement. I did not know that. We should play music. Classical music is supposed to be good for brain development. He was already reaching for his phone. I will make a playlist. I laughed at his enthusiasm. You are going to be a wonderful father. He looked up, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes. You think so? I know so. He smiled then, a real smile that reached his eyes, and I felt my heart do something complicated in my chest. Something I was not ready to name. At 12 weeks we reached a milestone. The first trimester is over, Dr. Morrison announced. The risk of complications drops significantly from this point forward. I am very pleased with how everything is progressing. Ethan insisted we celebrate. He took me to a restaurant overlooking the Hudson River, where the tables were set with white linens and candles and fresh flowers. The view was breathtaking, the city skyline glittering against the evening sky. This is too much, I protested as the waiter poured sparkling water into crystal glasses. Nothing is too much for this, Ethan said. We are having a baby, Brianna. That deserves celebration. Baby. Our baby. The word still felt surreal, even after weeks of doctor's appointments and prenatal vitamins and morning sickness that had finally begun to fade. What are you thinking? Ethan asked, watching me. I am thinking about how different my life looks compared to 6 months ago. I was just existing, going through the motions. And now, I gestured vaguely at the elegant restaurant, the beautiful view, the man sitting across from me. Now everything is different. Do you regret it? No, not for a second. I met his eyes. Do you? Never. His voice was firm, certain. Meeting you is the best thing that has happened to me in a very long time. We held each other's gaze for a moment that stretched into something significant. Then the waiter arrived with our meals and the moment passed, but its echo remained. That night, back at the penthouse, something shifted. We were sitting on the couch, watching the lights of the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows, when Ethan turned to me with an expression I had not seen before. Hesitant. Hopeful. Afraid. Brianna, I need to tell you something. My heart rate quickened. What is it? He took a deep breath. When I asked you to help me have a baby, I told you I was not looking for romance. I told you this was about partnership, about co-parenting, about creating a family. And I meant that. I believed it completely. But something has changed. He looked down at his hands. Over these months spending time with you, getting to know you, I have begun to feel things I did not expect to feel. Things I thought I might never feel again. My breath caught in my throat. I am not asking you for anything, he said quickly. I do not want you to feel pressured or obligated. Our arrangement stands regardless of how I feel. But I could not keep this to myself any longer. It did not feel honest. I sat in silence, my mind racing. The truth was, I had been fighting similar feelings for weeks. The way my heart lifted when he walked into a room. The way I found excuses to touch him, a hand on his arm, a brush against his shoulder. The way I thought about him constantly even when he was not there. Ethan, I said slowly, I think I feel the same way. His head snapped up. You do. I have been trying to ignore it. Trying to tell myself it was just hormones or proximity or gratitude. But it is more than that. I reached for his hand. You have become important to me. Not just as the father of this baby. As a person. As something more. He intertwined his fingers with mine, and I felt the warmth of his skin, the slight tremor in his grip. I do not know what this means for us, I admitted. I do not know how to navigate this. Neither do I, he said. But maybe we do not have to figure it all out right now. Maybe we can just take it one day at a time. One day at a time, I repeated. I think I can do that. He lifted our joined hands and pressed a gentle kiss to my knuckles. It was the smallest gesture, but it sent shivers down my spine. Thank you, he said softly, for being honest with me, for being brave. Thank you for the same. We sat there in the glow of the city lights, two people on the edge of something new, something fragile and precious and full of possibility. And for the first time, I let myself imagine a future where Ethan was not just the father of my child. He was my partner in every sense of the word. The following weeks brought a new kind of intimacy. Small touches lingered. Glances carried weight. Conversations drifted into territory that had nothing to do with baby names or nursery furniture. Tell me about your favorite memory, Ethan asked one lazy Sunday afternoon. We were on the couch, my feet in his lap, a position we had fallen into naturally. I thought about it. My 8th birthday. My mother took me to the beach for the first time. We could not afford a real vacation, but she saved up for months to rent a little cabin by the shore. We spent 3 days building sandcastles and collecting shells and eating ice cream for dinner. That sounds perfect. It was. What about you? He was quiet for a moment. My mother used to take me to the botanical gardens when I was young. Before she got sick, we would walk through the greenhouses and she would name all the flowers for me. Latin names, common names, everything. I did not care about the flowers really. I just loved being with her. How old were you when she passed? 7. My heart ached for the little boy he had been. I am sorry. It was a long time ago. But his voice was soft, and I could hear the loss that never fully faded. I squeezed his hand. She would be proud of you, I think. The man you have become. He looked at me with gratitude and something deeper. I hope so. At 16 weeks we learned the baby was a girl. Dr. Morrison pointed to the screen with a smile. See there? Congratulations. You are having a daughter. A daughter. I looked at Ethan and his face was transformed. Wonder. Joy. A touch of fear. All the things I was feeling reflected back at me. A girl, he breathed. We are having a girl. We are having a girl. He laughed then, a sound of pure happiness, and pulled me into a hug right there in the examination room. Dr. Morrison smiled indulgently and gave us a moment. A daughter. A little girl who would have his eyes or my smile, who would learn to read and ride a bicycle and fall in love someday. A person who did not exist yet but who had already changed everything. I love her already, Ethan said against my hair. I love her so much. Me too, I whispered back. Me too. As my belly grew, so did our bond. Ethan had always been attentive, but now he was devoted in ways that made me feel cherished in a manner I had never experienced before. He attended every doctor's appointment, asked thoughtful questions, took notes on his phone so he would not forget anything important. He read to the baby every night. I would lie in bed, the guest room having quietly transformed into our shared space, and listen as he pressed his lips close to my stomach and narrated stories in his gentle voice. Sometimes children's books. Sometimes poetry. Once, memorably, a quarterly earnings report that he swore would get her used to the family business. She is going to come out demanding stock options, I teased. Then she will fit right in, he replied with a grin. At 20 weeks, Ethan suggested I meet his father again. He has been asking about you, he said carefully. About the baby. I think he wants to be involved in his own way. I remembered my first meeting with Theodore, his assessing gaze and clipped words. Are you sure that is a good idea? He is trying. It is not easy for him, but he is making an effort. Ethan took my hand. You do not have to if you are not comfortable. But it would mean a lot to me. I looked into his eyes and saw the little boy who had lost his mother young, who had grown up seeking approval from a father who did not know how to give it. How could I refuse? Okay, I said. Let us do it. The meeting took place at Theodore's estate in Connecticut. The house was enormous, a sprawling colonial with manicured grounds and a long driveway lined with old oak trees. It was the kind of place that intimidated by design, built to impress and overwhelm. But when Theodore met us at the door, something was different. He was softer somehow. The rigid posture had relaxed slightly, and when he looked at me, there was something in his eyes that had not been there before. Miss Foster, he said, extending his hand. Thank you for coming. Thank you for having me, Mr. Calloway. Please, call me Theodore. He gestured for us to enter. I have had lunch prepared. Nothing fancy. I hope that is all right. The lunch was, in fact, quite fancy, but I did not point that out. We sat in a sunlit dining room with crystal glasses and fine china, and Theodore asked me questions about my life, my family, my work at the library. His tone was genuine, curious, not the interrogation I had feared. Ethan tells me you want to write children's books someday, he said at one point. I glanced at Ethan, surprised he had shared that detail. Yes. It is something I have dreamed about. Theodore nodded slowly. My wife used to write. Poetry mostly. Never published, but she filled notebooks with her words. He paused. I still have them. Perhaps you would like to see them someday. The offer caught me off guard. This gruff, distant man was opening a door, sharing a piece of his late wife with a woman he barely knew. I would like that very much, I said softly. Something shifted in Theodore's expression. Not quite a smile, but close. You are good for my son, he said abruptly. I can see that now. He is lighter with you. More like the boy he used to be. Tears pricked at my eyes. He is good for me too. Theodore looked at Ethan, then back at me. Then I am glad you found each other. It was not an embrace. It was not effusive acceptance. But for Theodore Calloway it was everything. On the drive home Ethan was quiet. Are you okay? I asked. I am more than okay. He reached for my hand across the console. That was the most my father has said to anyone in years. The most open he has been. He shook his head slowly. You did that. I did not do anything special. You were yourself. That was enough. He lifted my hand to his lips, a gesture that had become familiar but never lost its sweetness. Thank you. As the pregnancy entered its final trimester, we began to prepare in earnest. The nursery was complete now, a beautiful room painted mint green with white furniture and soft lighting. We had chosen a name together after weeks of deliberation, Lily. Wait, that name is not allowed. Let me revise. We had chosen a name together after weeks of deliberation, Grace. Grace Calloway Foster. A name that honored both hope and heritage. Grace, Ethan would say, his hand on my belly waiting for kicks. Can you hear Daddy? I love you, Grace. And Grace would kick as if in response, making us both laugh. I had never felt so full. So complete. So ready for what was coming. My mother came to visit in my 8th month. She stayed in one of the penthouse's many guest rooms, but she spent most of her time with me helping prepare for the baby's arrival. Together, we washed tiny clothes and folded receiving blankets and organized the changing table with military precision. You are going to be a wonderful mother, she told me one afternoon, her hands pausing over a stack of onesies. I have always known that about you. I learned from the best, I said. She smiled and pulled me into a hug, careful of my enormous belly. I am so proud of you, baby. So proud of the woman you have become. Thank you, Mama. For everything. For supporting me when this all seemed crazy. It never seemed crazy to me. It seemed like exactly what you needed. She pulled back and looked at me with knowing eyes. That man loves you, you know. I can see it every time he looks at you. I know, I admitted. And I love him too. Have you told him? I hesitated. We had acknowledged our feelings, but neither of us had used the word love. It felt too important, too permanent to say casually. Not yet. Do not wait too long, she advised. Life is short, baby. Do not waste time being afraid of the good things. Later that night, I found Ethan in the nursery. He was standing by the crib, looking down at the space where Grace would soon sleep, his expression soft and contemplative. Hey, I said from the doorway. He turned and his face lit up when he saw me. That reaction, that pure joy at my presence, never failed to make my heart swell. Hey yourself. How are you feeling? Huge. Exhausted. Happy. I walked to him, letting him wrap his arms around me from behind, both of us looking down at the empty crib. What are you thinking about? Everything. Nothing. He pressed a kiss to my temple. Just grateful, I suppose. For this. For you. For Grace. Ethan. I turned in his arms to face him. I need to tell you something. What is it? I took a deep breath. I love you. Not just because of the baby, not just because of everything you have done for me. I love you, who you are, your kindness, your patience, the way you make me feel like I matter. I love you and I needed you to know. His eyes glistened. Brianna. You do not have to say it back. I just needed. I love you too, he interrupted, his voice thick with emotion. I have loved you for months. I have loved you since before I even knew what it was. You are everything I never knew I needed, and I cannot imagine my life without you. We stood there in the nursery, surrounded by mint green walls and baby furniture, and kissed for the first time. It was soft and tender and full of promise, and when we finally pulled apart we were both crying and laughing at the same time. We are a mess, I said. The best kind of mess, he agreed. The closer we got to the due date, the more my fears began to surface. I tried to push them down, tried to focus on the joy and the excitement, but in quiet moments they crept back. What if something went wrong during delivery? What if I was not the mother Grace deserved? What if Ethan and I could not make our relationship work in the long run? I did not share these fears with anyone. I did not want to worry my mother or burden Ethan. So I kept them inside and they grew. One night Ethan noticed. We were lying in bed, his hand resting on my belly as it usually did, when he felt me stiffen. What is wrong? He asked. Nothing. Brianna. His voice was gentle but firm. You have been distant for days. Please talk to me. I considered deflecting again, but his eyes were so full of concern that I could not bring myself to lie. I am scared, I admitted. I am scared that something will go wrong. Scared that I will not be good enough. scared that after the baby comes, everything will change and not in a good way. He was quiet for a moment, processing my words. What do you mean, everything will change? I do not know. Tears welled up despite my efforts to hold them back. Our arrangement was about having a baby together. About co-parenting. But now we are more. And I am terrified that once Grace is here, once reality sets in, you will realize you made a mistake. That I was never what you really wanted. A mistake. He sat up, pulling me with him. Brianna, how could you think that? Because good things do not happen to me, I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Because my father left and every relationship I have had has ended, and I am just waiting for the other shoe to drop. The tears were falling freely now, all the fears I had been holding back pouring out in an ugly, honest flood. Ethan cupped my face in his hands, forcing me to look at him. Listen to me, he said, his voice steady and certain. You are not a mistake. You are not a placeholder. You are not someone I settled for because I could not find anything better. But, no. Let me finish. His thumbs wiped away my tears. You are the mother of my child. You are the woman I love. You are the person who brought light back into my life when I thought I would live in darkness forever. And I am not going anywhere. Not ever. You cannot promise that. I can. I am. He leaned his forehead against mine. I know I cannot control everything. I know life throws curveballs. But I can promise you this, I will fight for us. Every single day. Through whatever challenges come. Because you and Grace are my family now, and family does not give up on each other. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to let go of the fear and trust in what we were building. But years of disappointment had made me cautious. What if you change your mind? I whispered. What if you change yours? He countered gently. What if you wake up one day and realize you deserve better than a workaholic billionaire with complicated family dynamics and questionable cooking skills? I let out a wet laugh despite myself. Your cooking is terrible. See? You could do so much better. He smiled, but his eyes were serious. We both have fears, Brianna. We both have reasons to doubt. But I choose to believe that what we have is stronger than those fears. I choose to believe in us. How can you be so sure? Because I have to be. Because the alternative is living in fear, and I refuse to do that anymore. I spent years after Caroline died being afraid to feel anything. And then you came into my life and you made me brave again. He kissed my forehead. Let me be brave for both of us. Let me prove to you that this is real. I took a shaky breath. Okay, I said finally. Okay, I will try. That is all I ask. He pulled me into his arms and held me close. We are going to be fine, Brianna. Better than fine. We are going to be happy. All three of us. I wanted to believe him. And slowly I began to. I want to pause here and ask you something important. Have you ever felt the way Brianna feels? Have you ever been so afraid of losing something good that you almost pushed it away? If this story is touching your heart, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support means everything, and there is so much more of this journey to come. The weeks that followed were a slow process of healing. Ethan was patient with me, never pushing, never demanding, just consistently present. He showed me through actions what his words had promised. That he was committed, that he was staying, that I could trust him with my heart. And gradually the fears began to quiet. At 38 weeks, Dr. Morrison gave us the news we had been waiting for. Everything looks perfect, she said, reviewing the latest ultrasound. Grace is in position, and all her measurements are exactly where they should be. We could be looking at delivery any day now. Any day now. The words sent a thrill of anticipation through me. Are we ready? I asked Ethan later as we walked through the nursery one more time. I think so. He straightened a stuffed bear on the shelf, then turned to me with a serious expression. Actually, there is something I want to talk to you about. My heart skipped. What is it? He took my hands in his and guided me to sit in the rocking chair we had picked out together. Brianna, these past months have been the happiest of my life. Watching you carry our daughter, building this home with you, falling in love with you more every single day. I never imagined I could have this. I never believed I deserved it. Ethan. Please let me finish. He knelt in front of me, his blue eyes bright with emotion. I know our story did not start conventionally. I know I asked you for something most people would have refused. But you said yes. You trusted me. You opened your heart to me. And now I cannot imagine my life without you in it. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My breath stopped. I am not asking you to marry me right now, he said quickly. We do not have to rush anything. But I want you to know that my intentions are serious. That I see a future with you not just as Grace's parents but as husband and wife. As partners in every way. He opened the box to reveal a ring, a delicate band of gold with a single diamond that caught the light and sparkled like a star. This was my mother's, he said softly. My father gave it to me after our meeting in Connecticut. He said that if I had found someone worth keeping, I should make sure she knows it. He looked up at me with vulnerability written all over his face. Will you accept this? Not as an engagement ring, not yet, but as a promise? A promise that when we are both ready, I will ask you properly, and I will spend the rest of my life proving I was worth the chance you gave me? Tears streamed down my face. Happy tears. Overwhelmed tears. Grateful tears. Yes, I said, my voice breaking. Yes, I will accept it. I will accept everything. He slipped the ring onto my finger and it fit perfectly as if it had been waiting for me all along. Then he rose and kissed me soft and sweet and full of love. I love you, he whispered against my lips. I love you too. So much. We held each other in the nursery, the ring glinting on my finger, the baby moving in my belly, and I knew with absolute certainty that this was where I belonged. This was my family. This was my home. The next morning I woke to an unfamiliar sensation. A tightening across my abdomen. A pressure that came and went in waves. Ethan. I shook him awake. I think it is time. He bolted upright, instantly alert. Are you sure? Another wave of pressure. Stronger this time. Pretty sure. What followed was a blur of activity. Ethan grabbed the hospital bag we had packed weeks ago. He called Dr. Morrison. He helped me to the car with careful, steady hands even though I could see his own were shaking. It is going to be okay, I told him, trying to soothe his nerves even as another contraction hit. Of course it is. But his voice was strained, and he ran 3 red lights on the way to the hospital. At the hospital things moved quickly. I was admitted, examined, and told that yes, active labor had begun. Grace was coming. The next several hours were a mix of pain and anticipation, exhaustion and exhilaration. Ethan stayed by my side through every contraction, letting me squeeze his hand until I was sure I would break his fingers. You are doing amazing, he kept saying. You are so strong. I am so proud of you. His words anchored me through the worst of it. And then, finally, the doctor told me to push. Grace Eleanor Calloway Foster came into the world at 3:47 in the morning. But she did not cry. The room went silent. The nurses moved quickly, taking her to a table where I could not see what was happening. Ethan's hand tightened on mine, his face pale with fear. What is happening? I gasped. Why is she not crying? What is wrong? They are just clearing her airways, the doctor said calmly. It is common. Try to stay calm. But calm was impossible. Seconds stretched into eternities as I strained to hear, to see, to know that my daughter was okay. And then, a sound. A tiny, perfect, beautiful wail that filled the room and my heart and everything I had ever known about love. She was crying. She was breathing. She was alive. She is perfect, the nurse announced, wrapping her in a soft white blanket and bringing her to me. Absolutely perfect. They placed Grace in my arms and I looked down at her face for the first time. Tiny features. A dusting of dark hair. Eyes squeezed shut as she protested the brightness of the world she had just entered. Hi, baby girl, I whispered through tears. I am your mama. I have been waiting so long to meet you. Ethan leaned over us both, his own tears falling freely. She is beautiful. She is so beautiful. She looks like you, I said. Same chin. He laughed, a watery, joyful sound. And your nose. Thank goodness. We sat there together, the 3 of us, a family born from the most unlikely of beginnings. And as I held my daughter in my arms and felt my heart expand to accommodate a love I had never known was possible, I understood that every step of this journey had been leading to this moment. 2 days later we brought Grace home. The penthouse felt different now. Fuller. Alive with the sounds of a newborn, her cries and coos and the quiet snuffles she made when she slept. Ethan's father came to visit, holding his granddaughter with awkward tenderness and a softness in his eyes I had never seen before. She has the family eyes, Theodore said gruffly. She is going to be a handful. My mother stayed for a week, helping us navigate the sleepless nights and the constant feedings and the overwhelming reality of new parenthood. She taught me things I did not know I needed to learn, and she held me when the exhaustion became too much. You are doing beautifully, she assured me. Grace is lucky to have you. She is lucky to have all of us, I corrected. This whole strange, wonderful family. 1 month after Grace was born, Ethan asked me to marry him. He did it properly this time, on one knee in our living room with the city lights glittering behind him and our daughter sleeping peacefully in the nursery down the hall. "Brianna Foster," he said, holding the ring his mother had worn and that I had worn as a promise these past weeks, "will you make me the happiest man in the world? Will you be my wife?" I did not hesitate. "Yes," I said, tears streaming down my face. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring back on my finger and this time it meant forever. We got married 3 months later. It was a small ceremony in the botanical gardens, the same ones where Ethan's mother had taken him as a child. My mother walked me down the aisle. Renee stood beside me as my maid of honor. Theodore sat in the front row, holding his granddaughter with a pride he could no longer hide. Ethan waited for me under an arch of white flowers, his eyes shining with tears he did not try to hide. "You are beautiful," he whispered as I reached him. "So are you." We said our vows in front of everyone who mattered, promising to love and cherish and support each other through whatever life brought our way. And when the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, and Ethan kissed me while our families cheered, I knew that this was the happy ending I had never dared to dream of. That night, we stood on the balcony of our home, the city stretching out below us, Grace asleep in my arms. "Are you happy?" Ethan asked, his arm around my waist. I looked at our daughter. At the ring on my finger. At the man who had changed my life with a single impossible question. "Happier than I ever knew was possible," I said. He kissed my temple. "Me too." We stood there in the quiet, a family of 3 built on kindness and hope and love. And as the stars came out one by one above the city, I knew that this was only the beginning. Our story was just getting started.